Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love podcast. No, it's been a while, of course. In a hectic travel season on my end, but back into it, back at it. We'll get right, jump right into things as always. And I want to start off by talking about how I want to start off by talking about how emotional availability is the new sexy. And what I mean by that is how I think we all know obviously the term emotional availability, but how do we truly, convey that? How do we fully embody that as, it becoming that, new standard of attraction where that emotional presence resonate not only for ourselves, but, as we develop, relationships with other people, as, professionally, personally, and, overall and musically as well. So just how do we navigate those different relationships, but how do we show up fully emotionally available, in the sense of just truly communicating, listening, and being present, as I said earlier. Just how are we showing up for ourselves and for other people, and how do we carry that through the difficult seasons that come up, the conflicts that arise, and navigate through those uh, periods that allow us to still show up as ourselves fully without displaying, ourselves, as this facade. And then also, how do we go about from that sense, also prioritizing that further curiosity, not only in what we want for ourselves, but also in what we're hoping to do. Prioritize accountability, prioritize, vulnerability, and just being honest with ourselves, and being very present in the face of conflict and not shying away from it. Because I think oftentimes we know what emotional intelligence looks like for myself. I know it's something, as far as emotional availability, something I for sure struggle with. But always believed, I was emotionally intelligent. So that meant, oh, I'm also, mostly vulnerable. But um, it's not necessarily true. Those two things don't necessarily, coexist. I think it's important that how we show up to be emotionally available is putting aside, the charm in that instant, facade, or that, the imperfections we don't want others to see, and really allowing ourselves to be fully seen wholly. And I think uh pivoting into pivoting into the next portion of just how just the overall appeal of vulnerability and openness as a whole. I think sometimes we forget for ourselves, and honestly even from myself, that being vulnerable is okay. And I think, like, for myself, it's oftentimes that I've shied away from it, because it wasn't something I was ready to for others to, see that about me, in the sense of, being willing to, build that trust and, fully, obviously I'm an empathetic person, but how do you further foster that empathy and showing, the different parts of yourselves that others others may not, be aware of. And I think that's what leads and transforms those superficial interactions into, meaningful relationships. And how do you fully, expose yourself, not only emotionally, but build that trust, um, further deepen connections, and, just continue to, promote that self-acceptance. And I think touching on that piece of, those, transforming those superficial interactions and, into meaningful relationships. I think of often for myself of how a lot of people know worldwide. They might know Mo, but very few people know Muhammad. And I think that's, in part in myself, and, and kind of how I navigate, through this world that oftentimes, I mean, especially of late, I most frequently, introduce myself as Mo, that Muhammad, to people, because I don't know if they're ready to see. see who Muhammad truly is, or if I feel comfortable letting them see that parts of myself, because it's not the perfect, picture that I paint, and knowing, that as I navigate through that. Now, I'm not saying that I am not showing up wholly as myself. I, do my best to show up wholly as myself, but I think at times, within, different interactions, just knowing how to how to how to allow my comfortability to let my guard down, let the walls that I put up and built up throughout the years, let those down, and allow others to see me for me. And then I think it just comes from, as I said, just being honest and having that discernment, having those real honest conversations with other people. And then also to the point of self acceptance. What parts of myself am I, fully aware of, and what parts of myself, do am I, running from? What parts of myself have, am I willing to, share and, confront? And I think sometimes when we're working through the different parts of ourselves, we forget about the parts that, we hide and, we run from, oftentimes. And I think that's why it's important to, moving on to the next part, why it's important to just of be aware of your blind spots. And then for myself, I'll touch on a few blind spots in a moment, but I want to just get on for a quick second just how with our blind spots, those are those parts of ourselves that we readily maybe not are aware of. You can't see all the parts of yourself, obviously, but those parts of yourselves that you're working to remedy and get better, noticing the different patterns and the different traits, and how do you go about managing those triggers of different reactions to situations to where you're furthering personal growth and not damaging relationships, because failing to recognize your blind spots can hinder you as a person, in all areas of your life. And I think it's important to really manage that portion of yourselves. And then, kind of working through that ongoing journey of, self-reflection and, asking for feedback from other people and kind of really building yourself up, being genuine and honest with yourself. Like I said, I'll touch on kind of a few blind spots for myself. And that, a few of them are just starting off with, this first one, how sometimes, I fear being fully loved, and, this unpolished reality, and, let me rephrase that. I fear being fully loved in my own unpolished reality. And I think that means, the imperfections that I know I do have and, my faults. I feel like that something I've talked about, throughout the duration, of since this podcast inception, of this that perfectionism mindset. So I think because for myself, potential and the idea of what could be feels so safe that it's easier to stick to that, the thought of potential and what could be, and how people could see me, than exposing that part of myself. And obviously that's unfair to myself of not fully allowing myself to be human, in that sense. And then also in the sense of just how I'm still caught up in this, still being this person that I'm looking to be or hoping to be, in the long run, that it leads to, never, you know, never feeling like I'm, being loved as who I am, wholly. And obviously I do that disservice to myself, and how, navigate through clinging, to potential rather than, allow myself to be exposed. And then, the next blind spot, obviously, that I'm aware of within myself, is that I often tend to confuse my self worth, with the achievements that I uh with future achievements or just achievements overall throughout my life in the sense of where, I mm, I try to I think it's simple in the sense of where I attach the value of how of who I am and who I'm becoming to the things I've accomplished. I think navigating through that, and then also how I do the disservice of myself of with that, primarily and constantly evaluating my life, constantly trying to figure out like, okay, when I achieve this next thing is going to lead to this, instead of, staying in tune in the moment and in tune in that, that sense of devotion of being being content with how things are going. And I think navigating through that is, just knowing that sometimes too that in terms of with love for for everyone that I connect myself with, that it also become I allow that to kind of hinder my self worth as well in the sense of I chase that constant validation, chase that need for acceptance, and sometimes obviously we all feel we do in some different ways. So I think just working through that and being aware of that, and obviously confronting that part of myself. And then the next one is what I recently realized it applies to like so many different players, but obviously notably, romantically. But this one is, just how I'm addicted to pursuit over, a connection where that constant pursuit to achieve something or, conquer something, whether, obviously it's romantically, in that sense of, that physical conquest or as I said those achievements of getting that next role that brings this stream of income or just overall or just how do I build better relationships with people, so that constant pursuit of wanting things in but ultimately knowing that once I obviously achieve that what I was pursuing, that it becomes dwindling in the sense of where I start to like overthink and start to really question like, is this really what I wanted? And that it doesn't allow me to fully be connected, in the moment and kind of going back to that devotion of allowing myself to fully be in the moment and be present and, kind of what's going on. And allow myself to work through, the challenges of how I give too much, early on and, try to, confirm that emotional certainty that like, okay, this was, worth it. But in the end, giving too much of myself too much becomes draining because, you know, once that emotional certainty isn't, reciprocated, it's it's like, was this, all for nothing, ultimately, and, kind of begins to make me feel like, hey, was this worth this? And start to, question things in that sense. And then just, going back to kind of that, being addicted more to, that pursuit, the connection is uh how how I allow or the things that is tough, those tough conversations where it I'm not allowing myself to like I said be emotionally vulnerable because the what I was pursuing is kind of my hyper focus, and it becomes scary that exposure, like I said, exposing myself where it's uneasy to bear my myself to another person. So I always I've had a propensity of keeping people at a distance. So I think just being aware of those different blind spots within myself, and obviously for anyone out there too, just try to, sit down with yourself, and try to figure out, what those blind spots are for yourself too. Because I think we're all navigating obviously throughout this world, but sometimes we make it harder on ourselves to allow ourselves to be human because we feel like we have to be this thing that we don't need to be. Whether it's this perfect, ideal we create in our own heads, this image that we're trying to align with that we see out in the world, or we just question our abilities and not feel like it's enough in that moment because it doesn't align with where we saw ourselves or where we see ourselves going. So I think it's important to just be mindful of just, your different blind spots, be open, obviously, to vulnerability, and be willing to, have those tough conversations with yourself, as I always say, and just navigate, through those different things because emotional availability is sexy, and it's literally, it is the new sexy. It's it's what people are craving from ourselves. I think in this world where we don't truly allow ourselves to fully be emotionally available, that we oftentimes are, putting up this veil that we hope people like, but when they see the true parts of ourselves that may not, be the prettiest or, or the, the ugliest parts of ourselves, it's hard that we feel like, hey, someone might not be capable of understanding this. So I think it's just important to, navigate through that and, figure out, like I said, figure out your blind spots. And I know I usually talk, as I transition into this next portion, usually talk about sports, but I'm gonna keep, obviously, if you guys aren't aware, my sports takes, I'm gonna navigate off of those less moving forward. I'm obviously check out my sports takes on casual fandom with my little brother Hamza, my cousin Hassan. Yeah, check out, casual fandom, on all streaming platforms. You know, those are probably where I'm gonna keep, my sports takes, moving forward. But just quickly, I'll probably talk going, big, hot topic items here and there and, the world of sports, but I want to, shift off of that. But just quickly on world sports though, obviously, you know, hoping, for a quick recovery for, Rakia Jackson, obviously, out for the season after, tearing her ACL. The W season is off to, a fast start. And obviously, we're in the thick of things with the, NBA playoffs, the Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals. Uh, as I said, check out my, my sports takes now moving forward, on Casual Fandom podcast. And on that note, I do want to try though a new segment with you all. And I've been getting back into my writing bag and my poetry, and title this new segment Mo's Poetry Corner. So I'm gonna do a quick piece for y'all. And yeah, so new segment alert. But yeah, so we'll jump right into the piece and get started. All right. Wow, I'm super nervous. I'm not even gonna lie. But we'll begin. Yeah. So, looking to find ways to avoid being clueless, cues from my heartstrings to remain lucid, playing loose in the game as I try to remain tact, finding ways on this plane to find a heart that lets me back. Clueless, in fact, trying to remain sane, resorted to a myriad of ways to cope with the pain, eventually get back to loving me again. Too scared to give away my heart like that. Eventually got back to loving me again. Afraid to be scarred like that. Eventually get back to loving me again. No longer the shooter that I want to be, scared of the split in 3 or 4 or 5 ways that my heart will go ablaze. Yet it's okay to allow her to gaze into my world where I'm working on getting my dreams to align, this paper to incline to new heights, not for any materialistic tools, rather majestic views, visionary belief of what could be. Before I was clueless, blocking the world yet still seeking validation, feeling like a trophy would calm my nerves, soften scars that remain loosened. Winds felt so elusive, aimless with my heart and aloof Cupid. Clueless, in fact, trying to feed my pride, foregoing the grind for an easy route. when my dreams appear with no tears, instant gratification, trying to climb the mountains without a rung. Boys, you dumb, my mom would say it on native tongue, stuck in the back of my mind, forgetting to be grateful of the signs, stuck in cycles, letting my care decline. Knowing I was never clueless, just not an expert at the time. Knowing I'm not an expert, just have faith, belief that my voice carries weight beyond the doubts that creeps and weighs heavy. Making commitments very scary, like the boogeyman pop in on command when the fear is heightened, trying to turn back the hands of time, resorting to self sabotage. Am I even really healing me? The parts of my soul known by the tower that I put up, filled with nunchucks to avoid being led astray, not taking any risks to see what change can be. Will it remain a fantasy? Am I even really healing me? Chasing the dames that couldn't even bother to learn my name or listen to the pain my heart sings, all the depression and anxiety got me feeling deranged, knowing I'm destined to sit in the Bentley arranged. Am I even really healing me? Trivializing the game of life, making solace with my strife, no longer wielding the knife, already cut open and bruised from the many years I've misused and confused the destiny inside, ducking the light that shines brighter than 1 million kilowatts, sitting in the afterthoughts. Am I even really healing me? Never been no expert, you see, nor did I ever claim to be. I'm just working on being the best version of me, the version that shows up gracefully, wondering what adventures joy can bring. And yeah, so that's a new piece. It titled Clueless and Expertless. But yeah, want to share that quickly. And on that, obviously, we'll jump into next segment since obviously top four. Starting off with, of course, my favorite album currently in the moment. Well, it's tough to say because Drake dropped 3 albums, so which is honestly my favorite out of the 3 albums that he did drop. The one obviously I'm listening to at the moment. Listen to all three. Iceman, Maid of Honor, Habibti, um, and how I would rank the 3 albums: Iceman #1, Habibti 2, and Maid of Honor 3. And I would put. I'm still hesitant on Maid of Honor only because I did like, honestly, never mind. I could tell that's where that inspiration comes for Maid of Honor is from, honestly, never mind. I do like that, that EDL, dance, house music vibes overall that Drake is, conveying. Cause definitely, tracks like Stuck, Princess, trying to remember what else, Q&A, um, that I'm really liking off that album. Habibti, Habibti, what is my jams off Habibti? Wow, definitely all of Habibti, starting off with High Fives, Slap the City, WNBA, of course, um, what else? Classic, 5 Gen, is it Fort Worth? Fort Worth, White Bone, prioritizing, pretty much a good majority of those 11 tracks there. I think the only one I don't like off Habibti is Her No There. I'd say off Iceman. Iceman is straight fire. You think drinking our bars, straight bars. So many different, topics he's, talking about, obviously within the 2 years that happened, since the beef. And I love the albums. I love all 3 albums just in terms of the different topics they touched upon. But with Iceman, I mean, he's just, hitting you home. All the make them pays, starting off, of course, with make them cry, make them pay, make them cry, make them pay, make them remember, make them know. Straight fire, straight bars, and incredible throughout. All three of those, all of those tracks. And then you got Firm Friends, you got Janice, SCFU, Janice, shut the fuck up. Straight heat. And I knew our first listen. it was straight heat, and obviously seeing it now, obviously looking to be, going to be, number one on Billboard. And then just the fact of, the history that Drake is doing with these albums, three albums, that are all one, two, and three on the, Billboard 100, Billboard 200, three songs are the top three. And I would say on the Billboard 200 as well, the top out of the top 15 tracks on there, 14 of them are his. Incredible there. I mean, we always know Drake to be a hit maker, but just with these three albums, it's been incredible. And but yeah, my favorite track definitely Jen is Shut the Bug Up from Iceman. Uh Stuck off Maid of Honor, and then Stuck in Q&A, and then Princess, I do like that. And this kind of tied there, um and then off Habibti is gotta be Habibti's tough. Habibti is a tough one. I'm gonna say WNBA, it's sad to see your top for one A one B there. But yeah, Iceman, Jan shut the fuck up. Don't worry. Too hard for the radio, Firm Friends, National Treasure, Plot Twist still growing on me. Red to Atlanta, I didn't really like it early on, but now we're rocking with it, you know, overall. But yeah, just incredible, three incredible bodies of work by Drake. He truly is. And I think I told you guys this. Cole is my goat, and I hate that he had to give Cole some bars, on that part of, Big Them Pay. And I think he also gave Cole some bars on Make Them Remember. I think it was a slight jab there on that one too, but obviously, it's undebatable, I don't know these people. Cole will be my GOAT, but it doesn't mean I fail to recognize that Drake is one of the greatest of all time in music, and obviously of our generation. And his incredible ability to just create music that I know for sure will be timeless. Like classic is gonna bang, in the future. Like that's the thing about Maid of Honor is like I feel like I still need to truly fully hear it outside. I think this was gonna be fun about hearing it outside this summer. But yeah, he made three incredible bodies of work. That's all I've been listening to. That's definitely my favorite album of this current moment right now. Favorite show I'm currently watching, a lot of Apple TV, straight hit makers. It's a sense of just been watching obviously new season of Friends and Neighbors. Udo's Bay is solid. I started a new show last night called Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed. Incredible show there. What else I've been watching? Just my usual shows, FBI, sad to see, obviously finished up, The Neighborhood, obviously its final season. But yeah, those are just, some of the shows I've been watching. But yeah, Apple TV, straight hit makers. They don't miss. This is another show, but I can't remember the title of it. As well on Apple TV that I really like. Ted Lasso coming back. I'm excited for that. Excuse me. And then what else? What do I currently have going on? As I said, this came from, like it's been a while, with busy travel schedule, and about to have another one coming up soon. But exciting for sure. Being able to, incredible, sports moments, and being able to, be a part of the World Cup and being able to experience that is about to be exciting for sure. I will, be traveling, soon, Chicago and LA, have fun time. So I'm excited for that. And then, just, continue to work, continue to, build on myself and get better. Continue to work on, allowing myself to be, emotionally, available and vulnerable and open as well. And then what am I looking forward to? Like I said, this upcoming travel season for myself, and what lies ahead. And allowing myself to not look to what the future looks like after it, but being present in that moment. And taking it all in, because I already know it's about to be an incredible experience. So I'm excited for that. And then, like I was, just continue to, grow and get better, as I only can, day by day. But yeah, appreciate you guys, as always, be sure to, like, share, subscribe. And always, appreciate you guys, listening to my ramblings. Oh, as always, like I said, I want to try something different with this episode, less sports takes. Like I said, be sure to check out, Casual Fandom. Um, on that end. But yeah, just wanted to try something different. But yeah, as always, appreciate y'all. And until next time, peace.